Hi, everybody. My name is Valentina Dinica, and I'm Associate Professor at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. I'm also the author of the book Protected Area Regulations and Tourism, published by Edward Elgar in the UK. Thank you so much for taking time to check out my book. I will first explain why did I find it important to write this book. And then I will highlight what it offers and how you can benefit, how can practitioners, consultants, researchers, and students benefit from the book. Most of you might have had the chance to walk through a national park or a conservation reserve, and assuming perhaps that these are highly representative of your native nature, native ecosystems in the country, and perhaps assuming also that their primary objective is nature protection. However, as my book explains through historic global reviews, many such designations and the laws establishing them date back to times when people established them for other purposes, for hunting purposes, tourism, wilderness experiences, even harvesting natural resources or experimental scientific research. So my book has been motivated by concerns with warnings from scientists that the planet is experiencing its sixth mass extinction, and this time due to human pressures. Saving species and ecosystem services that are critical for society, this is further endangered by climate change, which will shift the location of habitats, ecosystems, ecological processes whenever they are not entirely degraded. And this means that in order to safeguard nature, we need to rethink whether protected areas are in the right locations. Do they have the right connectivity? Are they ecologically representative for native ecosystems and also in the context of climate change? Are they adequately regulated for human access? The governments of many states which have ratified the 1992 Convention on Biological Diversity are actually required to tackle such questions. And yet, after 3 decades since the adoption of the convention, many states are still to start their work on transforming their ad hoc and fragmented protected area networks into coherent, integrated, ecologically resilient and effective systems. So I wrote the book because I'm concerned that resteering national protected areas for better ecological outcomes will be harder than resteering the Titanic under short notice. In this book, I develop a conceptual framework to help practitioners ask the right questions and to help them re-regulate protected areas as part of the wider efforts that are necessary to reverse biodiversity and ecological degradation across all types of lands and waters. In terms of human access, I focused on tourism and non-commercial recreation. The framework's abbreviation is SERPAT, which stands for Spectra for the Ecological Regulation of Protected Areas and Tourism. The framework consists of 2 interconnected modules. Module A is dedicated to the ecological regulation of protected areas more generally. It selects 2 regulatory aspects or spectra, one referring to the ecological values that such areas should safeguard based on scientific advice. The second spectrum of Module A refers to ecological objectives. So once decisions have been made about ecological priorities for a specific PA, then decisions can also be made about how to regulate tourism and recreation within the respective ecological boundaries. So in order to enable decisions that are contextually eco-effective, the SERPAT framework contains also Module B, where 5 regulatory aspects or spectra are specified, as well as several regulatory options for tourism. And examples here include options to allocate tourism concessions and the environmental terms and conditions that should apply to businesses and non-commercial visitations. In the book, I apply the framework in order to evaluate the fitness for purpose of existing protected area regulation. And I do this for case studies on New Zealand, Tasmania, and Hawaii. So by applying this framework, practitioners and researchers, they will be able to better understand the alignment or mismatches between ecological and tourism regulations. Also, potential mismatches between contemporary scientific concepts and science-informed ecological priorities on the one hand, and what tourism or current regulations and management plans require of particular protected areas on the other. So understanding such mismatches helps develop area-specific insights regarding which ecological values and objectives might have potentially been overlooked. The case studies also show potential framework users how to rezone and re-regulate access more effectively. And by doing this within the boundaries of the prioritized ecological values and objectives, those in charge with protected areas are more likely to avoid overregulating tourism and recreation in areas of high ecological representativeness or resilience, and to avoid under-regulating access in poorly represented areas or vulnerable areas. Therefore, the book will be of interest to practitioners, tourism businesses, environmentalists and environmental NGOs, analysts who are keen to understand how to move from lose-lose situations to win-win in terms of balancing ecological protection and visitation action to PAs. Readers will also gain an understanding of possible ways for PA designations which could be revised either as ecological PAs dedicated to achieving ecological outcomes and provisioning PAs or cultural PAs where ecological outcomes could be, let's say, secondary. But the book should also be of strong interest to scholars and to students as well. So far, the regulation of protected areas has received hardly any attention from public policy scholars, legal scholars, political scientists, public administration scholars. So in the concluding chapter, I propose a research agenda on how to build upon the SERPAT framework by elaborating new theories and testing new hypotheses on the contextual eco-effectiveness of protected area tourism access. While the book is interdisciplinary, you don't need to worry. The first part explains all the necessary concepts that you need to know, drawn from ecology, public policy, law, and tourism. A final note on science is that the book offers unique global reviews in historic perspectives regarding how various conceptualizations of science have influenced protected area designation patterns and regulations. Therefore, the book, I believe, has plenty to offer, and all you need to invest is some quality time. I'm confident, though, that you will find the book very intellectually rewarding. It may even help you find new passions, find totally unexplored research avenues, and find new ways to make your own contribution to what should matter much more for everybody, safeguarding nature and ultimately safeguarding our own well-being as well. Happy reading, and thank you so much for taking the time to check out my book.